In 2018, Thailand experienced a supernatural incident that prompted a joint response from 17 countries, including the United States, Britain, China, and Japan. 12 members of a Thai soccer team from Chiang Rai, along with their coach, ventured into Thailand's fourth-largest cave system, the Sleeping Beauty Cave, for an exploration. But once they entered, they never came back out. That evening, torrential rain began pouring down. The Sleeping Beauty Cave floods every year, and it was only then that their families realized the gravity of the situation. When they arrived at the scene, all they found were 13 bicycles scattered haphazardly. The Sleeping Beauty Cave had already been completely submerged by floodwater. They called out the children's names into the cave, but got no response. At 1 a.m., Navy SEALs arrived on scene to begin rescue operations. The Chiang Rai provincial governor also rushed to the location after receiving the news. A foreign resident provided a structural map of the cave's interior. Although the cave system was complex with narrow passages, fortunately it also contained larger chambers that gave the children a slim chance of survival. The Navy SEALs organized their personnel and equipment and began the first wave of cave exploration. They searched for traces of the children deeper in the cave, while securing ropes to stalactites to facilitate future rescue efforts. By 5 a.m., the well-equipped team members returned to the starting point covered in injuries. Conditions inside the cave were extremely dangerous. One team member nearly lost his life. Their expedition had only managed to advance 800 meters into the 10-kilometer-long cave system. The difficulty of the rescue operation exceeded everyone's imagination. Seeing the disheveled state of the team members, the families' hearts sank to rock bottom, and their flickering hopes began to fade. The next day, the incident exploded across the media. The rescue operation escalated into an international crisis, with the local government calling for help from around the world. Volunteers from across the globe rushed to assist. A passing hydraulic engineer noticed volunteers using water pumps to extract water from the cave. Despite using the largest pumps available, his experience told him this approach would have minimal effect. He found a local elderly man and explained his credentials. To solve the water accumulation problem in the cave, they needed to address the source up in the mountains. Under the old man's guidance, they successfully found the mountain path and discovered countless deadly water inlets, where floodwater was continuously pouring into the cave. The only way to better solve the water problem was to divert the mountain floods downhill. However, the catch was that doing so would destroy acres of crops, wiping out a year's worth of farmers' hard work in an instant. No matter what choice they made, the result would be heartbreaking. When the governor learned of this, he personally approached the farmers with a tentative attitude, explaining the situation and hoping to secure a lifeline for the children.
มดกันกะจะอี้
ได้
แล้วมันจะช่วยละออนได้ก็เจ้า
จริงๆแล้วผมรับประกันอะไรไม่ได้ครับแต่ว่ามันเป็นการเพิ่มโอกาสรอดให้กับเด็กๆ
The farmers quietly discussed among themselves for just a few moments before quickly making their decision.
เอาเลยเจ้าเพื่อละออน
ขอบคุณมากครับขอบคุณครับ
By the fifth day, rescue personnel from around the world had reached 1,000 people. Among them were 2 cave diving experts from the British Cave Rescue Council. Upon arrival, they didn't even pause to rest. They immediately suited up and rushed to the scene. Their appearance would change the entire rescue situation. They reached Chamber 3, located 800 meters from the entrance, where water was being pumped out around the clock. But the water level continued rising, making the rescue operation increasingly urgent. After diving several dozen meters into the cave, a water pump malfunctioned due to high-pressure operation, with repair crews working frantically to fix it. This was also the last spot where they could surface and breathe. The 2 men put on fins and dove into the water at this location. The accumulated water in the cave was extremely murky with almost zero visibility. The underwater dangers far exceeded their imagination. Sharp stalactites were everywhere, threatening to cut them at any moment with serious risk of infection. The terrain was extremely narrow. If they got stuck in a rock crevice, they could pay with their lives. The 2 men struggled forward along the guide rope, each meter forward requiring tremendous physical effort. After nearly 4 hours, they finally reached the T-shaped intersection 1.6 kilometers from the entrance. This was the first large chamber that could provide shelter from the flood current. But despite calling out for a long time, they found no sign of the children. They had to continue forward to search for the next chamber. However, just as they set off, part of the mountain collapsed due to flooding. Violent floodwater came gushing out. Debris and powerful currents instantly trapped them in a desperate situation. Fortunately, both men were experienced and successfully navigated this crisis. But they understood that the path ahead would be even more dangerous, and they couldn't proceed recklessly. Exhausted, they immediately chose to return by the same route. The speed of the rising water was alarming. When they returned to the diving point, it was almost completely submerged by floodwater. A maintenance worker was trapped on the rocks above, unable to move. They could only share one set of equipment with him, planning to safely escort him out first and then return for the other person. But cave diving was beyond the capabilities of ordinary people. As soon as they entered the water, the maintenance worker showed signs of distress. Terrifying claustrophobia gradually drove him to lose his sanity. He desperately struggled against Rick, trying to surface, even knocking off Rick's secondary breathing apparatus in the process. However, during his ascent, he crashed headfirst into a rock, and blood immediately stained the water red. Rick quickly adjusted his equipment and forced the secondary breathing apparatus back into the man's mouth, then used all his strength to drag him back to shore, ultimately resolving the crisis. Rick and his partner informed the governor about the complex underwater conditions. To prevent casualties, the governor decided to temporarily halt all rescue operations.
I must ask, please, do not go in the cave again without my permission.
Up to this point, the rescue team still had no word about the trapped individuals. Family members began to consider giving up, only asking the government to bring their children's bodies back intact. The committee held an emergency meeting to discuss the cave conditions in depth, when to enter the cave and who should go. Everyone felt they should wait for the heavy rains to stop and pump out the cave water before making plans. But Rick and John had different opinions. Every minute of delay brought the children one step closer to death's door. As seasoned cave experts with 30 years of cave rescue experience, only they were qualified for this mission. They requested to begin rescue operations immediately. But the governor still decided to wait until the heavy rains subsided. The responsibility would be unbearable if foreign volunteers died during the rescue operation. On the 8th day, the diversion work made new progress. The first batch of pipelines was completed, and floodwater began being diverted downhill. The powerful current, like a massive army of ants, gradually consumed the farmers' year of hard work bit by bit. However, on the 9th day, something happened that no one could explain. A mystical event. Legend has it that 300 years ago, there was a beautiful princess in the royal palace of Jingdong who fell in love with a young horsekeeper. Due to their vastly different social status, their love faced strong opposition from the king. So the lovers eloped to Chiang Rai, Thailand, settling in a mountain cave. When the king learned of this, he flew into a rage and sent 13 assassins to pursue them. Unfortunately, the young man was discovered by the assassins while out foraging and died suddenly. Upon learning of her lover's death, the princess was overcome with grief. She then removed her hairpin and took her own life. After death, her blood became rivers and her body became mountains. The cave where they lived was the mysterious Sleeping Beauty Cave. In this incident, the 13 trapped individuals were believed to be the reincarnation of those 13 assassins. Even more mysteriously, many Thai people had the same strange dream. They dreamed of the princess who had died 300 years ago. The princess made a request: if they could find a high monk named Kruba Bunsham to come see her, she would forgive and release the 13 trapped boys. In the dream, the princess said that Kruba Bunsham was the reincarnation of the young horsekeeper. But people had never heard of anyone named Kruba Bunsham. A restaurant owner decided to try her luck and posted on Facebook searching for Kruba Bunsham. Soon, many Thai people commented that they had had the same dream. As the post went viral, people actually found this monk named Kruba Bunsham, and he had already come to Thailand. Even more remarkably, he had originally been preaching in Myanmar, but just a few days earlier, he too had this dream, and then set out for Thailand. When people found him, he had already reached the Thai border following the dream's guidance, and was about to arrive at the incident site in Chiang Rai. The next day, Kruba Bunsham arrived in Chiang Rai. After performing rituals outside the cave, he entered alone. He didn't emerge from the cave until 2 hours later. No one knew what happened inside. Upon coming out, he told everyone that the divers were getting closer to the boys, that the children were all safe, and that they would be able to see them in a day or two. He then performed a blessing ceremony for the princess outside the cave before driving away. After he left, the torrential rain in Chiang Rai immediately gave way to clear skies. On the 10th day, rescue operations could resume. Rick and John were once again tasked with descending into the cave. After 4 hours, they reached the T-shaped intersection. They used new ropes to connect to the previous endpoint and continued exploring forward. Soon after, they arrived at Pattaya Beach, where the children were most likely to have survived. Unfortunately, they found no trace of the children here either. At this point, the two men gradually realized that these 13 people might have already perished.
Right. I'll keep left. Feel out for bodies.
The two split up to search, hoping to quickly find the bodies of the deceased. After more than 2 hours, they reached Chamber 9, located 2.5 kilometers from the entrance. But as soon as they surfaced, a heavy smell filled their nostrils. Suddenly, flashlight beams lit up in the distance, and several thin, gaunt figures slowly moved toward them. However, when they clearly saw these figures, the scene before them left them utterly shocked. All 12 children and their coach were completely unharmed. For men with 30 years of rescue experience, this was simply an unimaginable miracle. Aside from dehydration caused by malnutrition, everyone was remarkably healthy. It turned out that during their ordeal, the coach had continuously taught the children to conserve energy and used meditation to ease their inner fears. They rationed the snacks they had brought into the cave to just 1 bite per day and avoided drinking muddy rainwater, instead seeking out springs and clean mountain water. This was how they had managed to survive until now. John suppressed his excitement and recorded everything with his camera. They had to immediately return to the entrance to bring this uplifting news to the rescue operation team. After 6 hours, they returned to the cave entrance. However, their journey back had given them time to think and gradually calm down. They warned the staff not to announce that the children were alive just yet. But at that moment, excitement had already made them lose their rationality. Before long, this news swept through the entire rescue site like a flood.
Oh, shit. Everybody knows.
That didn't take long.
That evening, the governor came to thank the two men for their significant contribution. But at that moment, their faces were heavy with concern. Getting these children out would be thousands of times more difficult than finding them. In other words, this was essentially an impossible mission. The governor proposed that they would arrange the most elite Navy SEAL team members with the most advanced equipment to rescue these children. But Rick quickly rejected this idea. This wasn't about the divers or equipment. During their first cave entry, they had rescued the trapped pump maintenance worker over just a few hundred meters. The terrifying claustrophobia had caused that swimming-capable adult to lose his sanity. How much more so for these innocent children? Asking them to dive back through over 2,000 meters of cave was simply a pipe dream. Now that they had found the children through tremendous effort, they could only watch helplessly as their lives slipped away. This was unacceptable to every rescue worker present. The Navy SEALs decided to first deliver supplies to the children. Rick and John invited themselves along, knowing the route beyond the T intersection was extremely dangerous, so they came to brief them on precautions. Most importantly, they had to conserve oxygen usage.
We'll get there. We reached the boys today.
3 team members set off. After 7.5 hours, they safely delivered supplies to Chamber 9 where the children were located. Measurements showed the oxygen content in the cave was below 20%. The children's lives were in constant danger. Even worse, when they prepared to return, they discovered that John and Rick's warning had been correct. There was barely any oxygen left, only enough for 1 team member to make the return journey. This undoubtedly made the already oxygen-starved cave even more dire, turning what had been 13 trapped people into 15. On the 12th day, families were frantic with worry. Looking at these expectant eyes, the governor still bit the bullet and made a promise.
ผมยืนยันได้นะครับว่าเด็กๆต้องออกมาได้อย่างปลอดภัยครับ
However, this statement would burden him, who should have been retiring, with an enormous responsibility. Faced with the current situation, Rick racked his brain and came up with a crazy plan, but he couldn't bring himself to say it out loud, until John, standing beside him, read his thoughts.
Oh, what were you thinking?
Just a crazy idea.
So tell me. We're crazy's better than nothing. We've got nothing.
We call Harry. Dr. Harris.
Hearing the name Harry, John immediately guessed Rick's idea and also fell silent. On the 14th day, the British Cave Rescue Council sent 2 more divers to replace John and Rick in delivering large quantities of supplies to Chamber 9. To build confidence among the trapped, they also brought handwritten letters from families. Soon after, the long-awaited Harry finally appeared. At this moment, Harry had no idea he was about to become the key figure in the entire rescue operation. When Rick mentioned that they needed his unique medical skills, Harry was stunned.
I'm an anesthetist.
Right.
No. No.
Harry shook his head vigorously like a rattle drum. He knew this went against the professional ethics of an anesthesiologist. Anesthetizing these children to bring them out of the cave was no different from directly killing them. Harry found this absurd plan impossible to choose. But in fact, this was indeed the only way to save them.
They're gonna die anyway.
On the 15th day, a team member went to deliver diving suits to the children. When he swam to the 1/3 point, his oxygen tube got caught in a rock crevice, causing massive oxygen leakage. He tried desperately to save the situation, but ultimately lost his life tragically. However, this incident put Harry in a difficult position. If the rescue didn't end quickly, not only would the children lose their lives, but more innocent lives might be sacrificed again. But if they used the anesthesia plan for the rescue, the children would have to endure over 5 hours of sedation. This meant they would need continuous anesthetic injections during the journey. Setting aside the risks of anesthesia, even if the oxygen masks could fit perfectly, saliva secreted in their mouths could cause them to suffocate at any moment. Injection infections, diver overload. Every single risk could turn the rescue operation into a tragic moth-to-flame scenario. Even with tremendous luck, they might only save 2 or 3 people at most. He didn't have the courage to make such a rash decision about the life and death of these 13 people. But Rick said that if they did nothing, all they would retrieve would be 13 corpses. If the children unfortunately died during the rescue process, at least they would have tried their best. That night, the rescue team held a secret meeting. The anesthesia plan was the only method to extract the trapped personnel. The governor inquired about the safety of the plan. Harry looked troubled.
I just can't answer that. Because I've never done it before.
But theoretically, it had some feasibility. If they decided to implement it, they had to be prepared for potential casualties at any moment. The governor decided to take the gamble. He requested approval from the minister for the anesthesia plan. After deliberation, they finally decided to secretly execute the anesthesia plan.
No one must know about the method you propose. Not even the parents. Do your best. And if we fail, the failure is mine alone.
On the 16th day, the rescue operation began. He took out a handful of syringes and distributed them to every diver present. Each person repeatedly inserted and withdrew needles from mineral water bottles. The purpose was to master the injection force and prevent needle malfunctions.
Well done, Charles.
Let's try again.
Harry carefully explained the key points of anesthetic injection to each diver. Starting tonight, they would extract the 13 children trapped in the cave in 3 batches. Accompanied by the devout prayers of the people, divers successively entered the water. At Chamber 5, located in the middle section, they conducted a final review of operational details.
Right. I stop here. When the first boy gets through the long dive, I swim to you and report. Because if it's not working, Harry needs to know before we bring any more out.
But if it is working,
And we get on with it. The packages. Or just the delivery guys.
right.
Under the children's expectant gaze, they gradually reached Chamber 9. Hearing that they had come to take them out, every child began cheering with joy. But unexpectedly, before the rescue operation even began, an emergency situation occurred. The coach selected 4 lighter children and let a small-statured boy go first. But the oxygen mask couldn't properly fit his face, so they had no choice but to replace him. Another boy put on the diving suit and swallowed a pill. Next, he was tied up completely, with zip ties binding his hands and feet. Not understanding why, the boy nervously came to Harry's side. Harry gently comforted the boy's emotions, then inserted the needle into his thigh. The anesthetic quickly took effect, and the boy's consciousness gradually became fuzzy. Once he was completely unconscious, they securely fastened the oxygen mask to his face. After confirming his breathing rate remained normal, they completely secured his hands and feet. Then, following the guide rope, they dove into the water. The first underwater human transport over 2 kilometers had begun. Due to extreme nervousness, Harry forgot to wait for a signal from Rick at the observation area and had already injected anesthesia into the second child.
Harry, took him to shore.
But once anesthesia begins, it can't be stopped. Everything had to continue. Fortunately, soon after, Rick emerged from the water with good news that the first child was safe and sound.
It's working.
However, the first boy who departed began showing signs of waking up after leaving the observation station. The responsible diver immediately stopped moving forward and prepared to inject the next dose of anesthesia. But due to excessive physical exhaustion, his trembling hands caused the anesthetic needle to sink to the bottom of the water. Fortunately, he managed to feel around and find the anesthetic needle, successfully administering the injection just before the boy fully awakened. At this time, the second child under John's care also successfully reached the observation point. After the boy received his anesthesia booster, another accident occurred.
No, he's not breathing.
John quickly turned him over. The boy's breathing returned to normal again.
Again?
John discovered that the boy would stop breathing every time he entered the water, but would resume normal breathing when returned to the surface. After several repeated experiments, the boy's condition gradually stabilized.
Breathe.
John felt like he had just ridden a vertical roller coaster and nearly became the first failed case. Meanwhile, the first child was successfully brought out of the cave after 7.5 hours, with all vital signs normal. After 16 days, escorted by medical personnel, he finally basked in sunlight once again. To stabilize the family's emotions, he was secretly loaded into an ambulance and then transferred to a helicopter. Under thousands of watchful eyes, he was sent to the hospital for treatment. By late night, the entire first batch of boys had been successfully rescued. Harry, bearing heavy responsibility, hesitated to come ashore. Only when doctors told him all 4 were safe and sound did his anxious heart finally settle. They had not only set a precedent in rescue history, but had created a miracle. Harry's mixed emotions of joy and worry were beyond words. Seeing helicopters constantly flying back and forth overhead gave people a growing sense of hope's dawn. But Rick and John's faces showed no trace of smiles. They understood that having successfully rescued 4 alive had made them heroes. But if they next brought out even one dead body, their reputation would certainly flip to the opposite extreme, and they might even bear eternal infamy. On the 17th day, the mountain flood diversion never stopped for a moment. Due to the enormous volume of flowing water, the number of pipes was becoming insufficient. An experienced elderly man simply asked one question. Then he stood up and cut down bamboo, splitting it in half through the middle. With the old man's help, the diversion project was finally completed. But at this moment the sky rumbled ominously, and dark clouds rolled in. The real rainy season was about to begin. That evening, the rescue team finally found a suitable mask for the boy, but along with it came the life-threatening rainwater. No one could sleep that night. They dared not imagine how difficult tomorrow's rescue would be. On the 18th day, the torrential rain intensified. The farmland had now become a vast ocean. Rescue difficulty reached unprecedented heights. Rick stated that if the next operation couldn't guarantee his own safety, he would withdraw from the rescue. However, upon reaching the cave, the water level had risen to about 3 times its previous height. This meant they needed to dive much greater distances while also resisting unpredictable strong currents. The danger level was unimaginable. Everyone understood the severity of the situation and turned their eyes to Rick, the leader. Whether to continue into the cave was entirely in his hands.
Okay. We can make it. We better move fast.
Okay, lads.
This was the last and most dangerous rescue operation. They had to rescue all trapped personnel in one go tonight. After reaching Chamber 9, they discovered through repeated attempts that the boy's mask still couldn't fit properly. But now there was no time to search for a new mask. A diver had no choice but to personally modify it. The boy was replaced once again, and the other 3 boys set off in succession. Underwater conditions became increasingly complex, with strong and chaotic currents and even lower visibility. A young diver named Chris accidentally dropped his guide rope while helping a boy change direction. The powerful flood current swept him further and further away until he lost his bearings. He could only try to touch the cave bottom, find suitable footholds, and prevent himself and the boy from being swept further by the flood. Fortunately, he touched an electrical wire and followed it to chamber 4. Luckily, the boy's condition remained normal, but the anesthetic timing interval had been completely disrupted. To ensure the boy's safety, Chris could only wait in place for rescue. Meanwhile, the boy's mask was finally modified successfully. He eagerly put on the diving suit and swallowed the pill. After the anesthetic injection was completed, he finally set off. Rick, who had departed second, discovered Chris waiting in chamber 4.
Chris!
He comforted Chris's emotions and told him to stay put and protect the boy, waiting for Harry to confirm whether the boy was safe before following Harry's arrangements. Meanwhile, all other personnel successively dove into the water. At this point, Chamber 9 was completely evacuated. Soon after, Chris finally waited for Harry. Although his emotions were nearly at the breaking point, he still remained guarding the boy's side. Upon examination, the boy's body was fine, but the perceptive Harry could see Chris's fear and guilt.
You want me to maybe take over from here?
No. I should do it.
It's for you, Ben.
Well, I mean, Rick said, he said to just do what you said, so...
Well, I reckon you've done the hardest part. Why don't I do the last bit? And that way I could say that I was the rescuer too.
I mean, Rick just said to do what's best for the boy, so...
I really think that that's what's best.
Yeah? Yeah, okay.
Harry used the art of language to dissolve Chris's inner guilt and made the optimal plan. Although the remaining journey was arduous, fortunately everyone made it back safely in the end.
Come on! Come on!
The Sleeping Beauty Cave rescue operation was a complete success. All 13 trapped individuals were miraculously saved. In this moment, the joy of saving their compatriots' lives and conquering nature made the rescue personnel raise their arms in celebration, crying tears of joy. Over 5,000 volunteers from countries around the world had accomplished an impossible mission. During the rescue, they forgot about differences in skin color, nationality, and culture. United as one, they created a great chapter in rescue history that would never be forgotten. Everyone was immersed in joy except anesthesiologist Harry, who sat alone in a corner after briefly smiling. He had just received a phone call. At this moment, he and his father were separated by life and death, never to meet again. On the 19th day, rescue facilities were dismantled one by one. Each volunteer returned to their countries and families, removing their hero's halo to become anonymous ordinary people once again. All the children received timely treatment, and their vital indicators returned to normal. After a brief period of recovery, they could reunite with their families and return to normal life. During the operation, 2 Navy SEAL members paid the ultimate price. One was Saman Gunan, who drowned as depicted in the film. The other contracted a blood infection during the rescue process and died shortly after from his illness. The day after the operation ended, Sleeping Beauty Cave was completely submerged by floodwater for 8 months. The farmers who suffered losses received reasonable compensation from the government. The stateless coach and 3 boys received Thai citizenship granted by the government. The rescue personnel came from 17 countries worldwide with over 5,000 participants. The success of the rescue may not have been a miracle, but rather humanity's great instinct that has allowed us to survive throughout the river of history. It is precisely because we possess this instinct that humanity has been able to continuously rebuild and progress through countless difficulties and disasters over 6 million years. This instinct is our reverence and cherishing of life. Perhaps we can hardly achieve the self-sacrifice shown in the film, but when we encounter people who stand up for others' lives or rights, please don't be stingy with our praise and applause. Don't let this instinct gradually disappear amid indifference and mockery.